you to all of
All right, thank you so much. Namaskar.
you. Yeah,
Good
I'll, I'll,
morning.
I'll I'll start it. I'll just do a brief
Okay,
introduction and then
sure.
we'll take it
Yeah,
from there.
please. Yeah.
Namaste to all of you and a very warm welcome to this evening's Zoom call. As you all are aware, every day we have one important guest who comes on our call and then we take up one aspect of Bharat or another. And today we are privileged to have Senge Hasnan Sering ji. He is, I don't know how to describe him, I'll try. He is Balti by tribe. He is a Ladakhi by culture, Shia Muslim by religion, and a Bharatiya at heart and soul. I hope I
Thank
have done a decent job at putting you
you. Very,
across.
very nicely put.
Yeah. So he is actually, the director of the Balti Studies in Washington D.C. and he's a champion trying to tell the world that Baltistan is legal territory of India and India has a duty to take it back. And all Baltis are Indians. Unfortunately, we Indians have forgotten what Baltistan is all about. We confuse between Baltistan and Balochistan. We don't know geographically where Balochistan, where Baltistan is. Forget about a common
Yeah.
Indian, but even the establishment never bothered what Baltistan and Balochistan is all about. So much so that in Kargil war, when the Northern Light Infantry was sitting on the Kargil tops, the language they were speaking, nobody in the Indian establishment understood. Only after a couple of days, somebody figured out that this is a Balti or a language from that part of the territory. We don't have anybody teaching people the Balti language. We don't have anybody teaching even Sheena language, which is part of it is in India, the Gures and other things. Unfortunately, over 70 years, we have completely ignored parts of these Bharat's territory. So
Yeah.
today, Sengeji is going to talk about the history, how these territories are connected to Bharat. There have been Hindu kingdoms before, there have been Buddhist kingdoms before, and the cultural connection between all these things have been tremendous for centuries before Pakistan took over. And of course, the British role was there. Captain Brown was the guy who was the one who actually handed this over on a platter to Pakistan, and he was awarded Nishane-Pakistan and also the Order of British Empire. Two kingdoms awarded him for the service that he has done of betraying India. So one of the victims is in front of us today. Sengeji, the floor is yours. Please, you can go. You can start, and it's
Thank you,
yours.
Ji. Namaskar. Thank you, Giridharji. Actually, I think I made Major Brown's wife my enemy. In England, I was speaking at a seminar, and I said few things that she probably expected that I was very proud of what her husband has done. And Dr. Shabir Chaudhry was also there as one of the speakers. So she was shocked when I said, uh, and Pakistan is an occupier. Uh, Anyways, thank you so much for inviting me. I know, Alok ji is there. He pretty much, knows everything about Gilgit-Baltistan. And Nidhi ji is there. She's written a book on it. So I don't think, I've much left to decipher or say. I mean, we could keep my presentation a little shorter, and then we could have more like, a Q&A or sharing opinions on how people think about Gilgit-Baltistan. I would love to hear more from the Indians about what they think about Gilgit-Baltistan. So that would be very interesting. So I introduced myself as, a native born in District Shigar, the famous mountain K2, the second tallest in the world, is in District Shigar. So that's how Shigar is famous in rest of the world. Shigar shares border with China. On the other side of Shigar is Shakhsgam, which was part of Shigar, and it was given to China by Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in 1960s. Gilgit-Baltistan has 10 districts for the time being. They're thinking about adding 4 more strategically placed area. I just wrote an article that was published today. It's on Sunday Guardian. I think it's run by M. Akbar Saab. And it's called Gilgit-Baltistan, where Pakistan, China, and Iran meet. So there's a old book where the three empires meet. I don't know. Alokji knows about that. Nidhi must have given reference of that book. So I kind of like copied that title and I said where Pakistan, China, and Iran meet. And I was trying to connect how Gilgit's religion and its location being right next to China enable Pakistan, China, and Iran to become part of CPEC. So please read it, Sunday Guardian. It's in the world section. I think they usually put my articles in the opinion, but I think it's in the world section this time. Hunza is one of our districts that shares border with both Afghanistan and China. It's a very strategic area. Then Rizar shares border with Afghanistan. It's about 106, 108 kilometers of land that India claims Afghanistan is immediate neighbor because of those two districts. Then in the south we have a store that connects with POJK, Kishanganga Valley, and then through POJK it connects with the Kashmir Valley like Ganderbal and Baramulla and those districts, Gurez. So it's a very strategic area. It's connected with Central Asia. It is connected with China. I was talking to some friends the other day, and I was saying that if Gilgit-Baltistan had direct border with Central Asia through Afghanistan, then it would not be so much dependent on Iran's oil and gas, right? You would have got your oil and gas from Kazakhstan, from Turkmenistan. You would have got other natural resources from Uzbekistan, cotton and other. You would have gotten your need of electricity, from Tajikistan. They produce about 50 to 60 lots of electricity to the former Soviet Union. So this dependency that India has on Iran and the Middle Eastern natural resources is because it doesn't have a direct connection, land connection with Central Asia. And that connection comes through Gilgit-Baltistan. So for India's sake, I think it's a very important, aspect that need to be, viewed and reviewed by the policymakers, how important it would be for India's economic independence to have Gilgit-Baltistan as its part. Another reason why Gilgit-Baltistan is strategically so important because it connects China with Pakistan. And in the last 50 or 60 years, we have seen that China has used Pakistan to bleed India. And when Pakistan attacks India on its western border, and it takes all the attention, away from the northern border where Tibet is, then it gives China all the peace and the time and the space to exploit and abuse people in Tibet and Xinjiang, while keeping India busy with Pakistan. It's a very good, I think, positive aspect that China has found through Pakistan, how to engage India and distract India from its the threats that coming from the north, and at the same time China gets to exploit Tibet, its resources, and improve its own economy. So I think this connection that comes between Pakistan and China and their collaboration has restricted India in many ways. It has restricted India from forming a very good physical relationship with its one of very old friends, Afghanistan. So China sees this, as a very strong leverage that India should never have a physical connection with Central Asia and Afghanistan. It's for China's own survival, and China's competing with India to be Asia's giant, as we see what's happening through the China virus, COVID-19, is that compared to all other economies all over the world, like Europe and America, and India has kind of sustained. Obviously, China is thriving, but in addition to China, India has also been able to, not go through the same economic downfall that we see in Europe right now, or some other parts in the Western Hemisphere. So I think China is very concerned that India will continue to grow and continue to challenge China in the short and the long terms. And Gilgit-Baltistan is that one linchpin that India needs to boost and enhance its own, the speed of the growth. So I think this importance of Gilgit-Baltistan in the historical context, and as well as in the modern context, it continues to enjoy that importance. It never goes away. So I think that shows how, the policymakers need to pay attention to Gilgit-Baltistan. Gilgit's population is a plus point. When you look at the size of Gilgit, I mean, it's almost 76,000 square kilometers. That's 3 times the size of the state of Maryland. Population is on. So if you have huge land with a lot of resources and fewer people, then I think it's very easy to sustain economies there. Gilgit-Baltistan, all the water that Pakistan gets, 60 to 70% of the water comes from Gilgit and Baltistan. Obviously, it comes through Ladakh and Tibet, but eventually, when it gets to Pakistan, it comes through Gilgit, and it becomes the volume becomes bigger because it adds the river from Rizar and the Hunza and Astor, and eventually it becomes a much larger entity than compared to when you see in Ladakh or in Tibet, for instance, when it looks like a small creek. We have natural resources, and I'm sure Ladakh has the same natural resources that we have. Minerals that we have, I'm sure Ladakh is the same, gold and copper and a lot of heavy metals, a lot of minerals that could be used in space technology, for instance, could be used in telecom, for instance. China is exploiting and abusing our land, not just for strategic transit, but also for its natural resources. So it steals all our resources mining is done pretty much by the Chinese without much benefit to the local people. So these are some of the significant aspects of Gilgit-Baltistan that China values, and that's why China thinks that prolonging its occupation of Gilgit-Baltistan is fundamental to its survival, not only because it links with the Middle East and Africa and the Indian Oceanic region, but also because a lot of natural resources come from Gilgit-Baltistan. Eventually, when China will be able to build all those dams, it will be able to take electricity back through those corridors that it is creating and facilitate people in Xinjiang. So Xinjiang population is increasing, as we know. A lot of Hans, non-Uyghurs are coming and settling in Xinjiang. Urumqi's population is almost 70% non-local. So this increase in population needs to be sustained, and energy is, very important, vital for that economic and social sustainability for Xinjiang. So China is building dams which will probably produce anywhere between 15 to 20,000 megawatts. And then eventually, but the capacity of Gilgit-Baltistan is anywhere between 60 to 80,000 megawatts. So if China is given a free hand, it will continue to exploit, it will continue to build more dams, it will continue to displace local people, change demography. So these are the problems that we see coming because of China-Pakistan's collusion. Religion-wise, Gilgit-Baltistan is almost 100% Muslim. It's almost 70% or 75%, I would say, different Shia denominations. So we have the 12er Shias, We have the Twelver Sufis. We have the Shia Ismailis, Nizaris, also called Aga Khanis in Pakistan. And then we also have Twelver Hamadanis. So a lot of different Shia factions that we have there that collectively make about 70 to 75% of the population. But if you add Pakistani settlers who have come to Gilgit-Baltistan, then the non-Shia population increases from 20% all the way to almost 35 to 40%. So that is one strategy that Pakistan is using. That while it is getting China's help to prolong the dispute and keep India at bay, at the same time it's been able to change the demography, and eventually the population from the Pakistanis will be in such a number that India might not be able to claim the land because the native population will be in a small minority then. So our languages are, as you mentioned about being a Balti and Ladakhi, we speak 6 or 7 major languages. Wakhi is a language that is connected to Tajik language. So that is very easy. It's spoken in the north on Tajik-Afghan border and China's border, Xinjiang border. Then we have Dardic languages like Shina, which is connected with Kashmiri and Chitrali. And then we have, there's another language which nowadays I don't know what they call it, but its historic name is Domaki. And Domaki is connected with languages spoken in central India. And it's also connected with languages spoken in Eastern Europe, like Romaki, for instance. The Roma people who have their ancestry from India. So it's a very, important language to trace the migration pattern of the Romas who started their journey from India and through Afghanistan and Iran and Turkey, and eventually they made up, made Eastern Europe their home. Then we have Balti, obviously, that's the language spoken in 4 districts in the east of Gilgit-Baltistan. It's connected with Tibet, and it's one of the oldest Tibetan dialects. I think the only other older Tibetan dialect would be Girong Skat, which is spoken in Kham. And so Balti could be, the second oldest Tibetan dialect. So Ladakhi, Balti. Then we have Purik, which is a mixture of Ladakhi and Balti. Then we also have Zanskar, which is a mixture of, Ladakhi and Spiti. So they're like an overlapping of different dialects that happen, and it gives birth to a new dialect. So Tibetan has more than 200 dialects and sub-dialects because of overlapping of, and it's very interesting because it also shows the migration pattern of the Tibetan people from different valleys who eventually came to Ladakh as part of the Tibetan army, most probably. Just like in India, you have in the military people from all different ethnicities. So people from different valleys of Tibet were part of the army, and they settled in Ladakh and Baltistan, and they were speaking different dialects. So there's a very beautiful combination of these different dialects that kind of blended in Baltistan. So it's a very rich, diverse population from originating in all different directions, east, west, south, and north, and then eventually coming together to form this blend. And even today, we have to speak Hindi, Urdu, or English to communicate with each other because the languages are so, far apart when it comes to understanding and so this is pretty much, a little bit. I wanted to give an overall, Gilgit-Baltistan itself. Then we can go to history a little bit. So as you mentioned, Girdarji, that there's a history before Gilgit-Baltistan became part of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, and then we have history that that evolves after it became part of Jammu and Kashmir. So before it became part of Jammu and Kashmir, it was like small principalities. Each valley in Gilgit-Baltistan had their own, Raja, and they had connections with, China and Afghanistan and Tibet and Himachal, Kashmir, uh, Swat, Khoistan, different parts. Um, there was a time when Afghanistan invaded our areas, and they also have some influence there. We used to be like a, a breeding ground for different religions. So you can say that Buddhism spread from Gilgit-Baltistan into Central Asia and then towards Tibet, towards Ladakh. So even though today Ladakh is Buddhist and Baltistan is not, but Buddhism went from Baltistan to Ladakh, right? Before that, it was Bon religion. So all of us, we were followers of Bunchas, and then eventually, through Gilgit-Baltistan, Buddhism went to Ladakh and into Tibet, and further north towards Mongolia. Also, from Gilgit-Baltistan, Buddhism went towards Central Asia. It also went through Afghanistan, but there are a lot of universities stationed in Gilgit-Baltistan. Famous Rinpoches and teachers, they used to travel to Tibet to teach Tibetans religion. So it was the Balti teachers who taught Tibetans their religion, and today, Tibet is the bastion of Buddhism. So I think it's a very interesting connection that we have with Tibet. As you said about Hinduism, for about 550 to 580 years of Hindu Raj in Gilgit-Baltistan. Even today, I would say almost 20 to 30% of the names of our valleys and the mountains are in Sanskrit. After, Hindu gods like Lord Krishna, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, Lord Ram, obviously, Lord, Hanuman. These names still exist, and we use them. When you hear Hanu Chal, Chal means water, comes from the Sanskrit Jal, and Hanu is from Lord Hanuman's name. Hanu Chal, that's a village there. Then Ram Ghat, it's a ghati, it's a valley, and after Lord Ram's name. And then we have Harimal. Mal means downtown, like a city center or the center of your village, and Lord Hari's name been given to that place. And Hare Moksh, which is one of the most beautiful valleys in district Gilgit, Hare Moksh. Moksha, from Moksha, Lord Hara, Lord Hara Moksh. So and there are a lot of names. Mountains, obviously, after Lord Krishna and Lord Shiva, you would find connection is still there, and we are pretty much integrated with India because of that. The fact that a lot of knowledge spread from Gilgit to other parts of Central and Eastern Asia. So I think it kind of gave a deep relationship, was able to put its root pretty deep, where even after almost, I would say, 400 to 450 years of Islam, local people still have a semblance of a civilization that is pretty much it resonates and with rest of the communities in the Himalayas or south of Himalayas along Ganges and Indus valleys. So then, it was the Tibetan rule after they started to disintegrate. And Lang Dharma was one of the kings. I think he was killed, and then Tibet failed to keep control over Gilgit-Baltistan from Lhasa. So then the local people started, having their own autonomous principalities. we had almost 18 principalities in Gilgit-Baltistan. And they were fighting with each other, they never got along. Um, People of Gilgit-Baltistan try to give this notion, this impression that, everybody was living in, peace and tranquility, and we were just one nation. And then the Dogras came and they attacked us, and they start killing and they start pillage and they start rights abuses and all that. But the fact is that Rajas of one valley were attacking the other, and vice versa, and it was going on forever. They used to occupy each other's lands and kill each other's people, despite the fact that they belonged to same religion, same language. But there was never this unity among local people. So it was Maharaja Gulab Singh, I think, who ruled Jammu at that time, and because of what was happening in the Punjab, dynasty, and their stronghold over their own land, and the way it was evolving, it gave him some leverage and a direct connection with the British, right? So he was able to attack Ladakh and Baltistan, and then eventually Gilgit. And Ladakh and Baltistan were then made part of Jammu. So from that time all the way till 1947, we were part of Jammu province, Baltistan and Ladakh. So that is, the connection that we had with the Maharaja dynasty. Then they obviously had the Kashmir agreement with the British. They were able to acquire the valley. They were able to acquire the Punch, Rajgiri, parts north of Punch like Muzaffarabad. And then at some point, the Rajgiri was so strong that Chitral was part of it, Sawat was part of it, Dir was part of it, Kohistan was part of it, Mansehra was part of it, Murree was part of it. Parts of Jhelum, today in Punjab, were part of it. It was a huge dynasty, towards Kulu Manali. It extended towards Kulu Manali, it extended towards Tibet, towards Mount Kailash, towards the Tibetan Principality of Guge, for instance, and other areas, Purang, for instance. So it was a huge area, and then Gilgit-Baltistan at that time was not united with Gilgit in one administrative unit. Ladakh and Baltistan were one district, ruled directly from Jammu, whereas Gilgit was ruled from Kashmir. And Gilgit itself was a district, separate district. Then it had tribal areas, and then it had the, principalities of Hunza and Nagar. And then what happened is that, because of the strategic importance, the British decided to rent some parts of Jammu and Kashmir from the Maharaja. So they ended up renting some parts in Gilgit district, leased for about, I think, 60 some years, because the British felt threatened from the Russian and the Chinese side. During the same time, Chitral was disconnected from Gilgit-Baltistan, and Jammu and Kashmir, and it was put under Malakan. At that time, it was agency. So then the British were going to leave in 1948. They decided to leave in 1947. World War, kind of weakened their economy. They couldn't sustain it. Even though a lot of people, in India take credit that they kicked British out, but I think it was their own weaker economy that forced them to leave early. So they decided to break the lease, the rent, and they returned Gilgit-Baltistan back to Maharaja. In the month of July, all of our Rajas, except the Raja of Rondu, that's a valley between Gilgit and Baltistan, the last valley where the Balti language or the Tibetan language is spoken. It's called Ronyul or Rondu. So he decided to not go, but the other Rajas of the principality, they went to Srinagar in the month of July 1947, and they reaffirmed their allegiance to Maharaja Hari Singh. At that time, Hari Singh, his great-grandson, was ruling. And gave him the right to accede to either India or Pakistan. So um, Maharaja decided to accede to India. Gilgit-Baltistan, Jammu Kashmir, Ladakh became part of India. And that is pretty much, where the 1947 history, ends, because then 1948, the war happened, November 1947, the war happened. Um, and as you mentioned, Major Brown and the British command in Peshawar, they all colluded, and in Rawalpindi they are colluded. They attacked Punch, they attacked Rawalakot, they attacked Muzaffarabad, they attacked Gilgit, and local people wanted to resist, but then there was threat from Wali Sawat, and he threatened to attack Gilgit-Baltistan if they did not cooperate with Sardar Alam. He was I think a sub-tehsildar, assistant tehsildar that was sent by Pakistani government, Liaquat Ali Khan, the Prime Minister. So anyways, Pakistan got control of Gilgit-Baltistan, then the ceasefire line turned in, kind of like stopped India's advancement. India was in process of taking the land back. And eventually, when Bhutto signed Simla Agreement, the ceasefire line eventually turned to line of control. So this is pretty much, I think, where, our history is. I think I've said it before that if you look at all the historical documents that come under the umbrella or under the folder of partition of India, India Independent British Partition Plan, I think that one of the most significant and strongest legal document that unites Gilgit-Baltistan with India is the Letter of Accession, because it's an instrument that was approved by a sovereign authority, which were the British, and it was to decide which state was going to, go with what country. So that decided the fate of Gilgit-Baltistan before the invasion. A lot of people in Gilgit-Baltistan like to claim that it was the people of Gilgit who, rebelled against the Maharajas, and it was self-sustained and self-initiated rebellion against the Maharaja. But the fact is that now, a lot of people are realizing, and they're admitting, and they're writing, that it was Pakistani invasion. Local Gilgit people, had very little part in resisting India's advancement. And it was Pakistani soldiers were there, Chitral scouts were there, which came under command of Peshawar. So I think, from the international legal point, it was an invasion from Pakistan. It was not a rebellion from local people against Srinagar, as Pakistan liked to put it. It was an invasion of Rabat and towards Gilgit. And it was occupation by Pakistan, which is an illegal occupation. And I think United Nations resolution has failed to bring Pakistan to where it belongs, which is withdrawing from Gilgit-Baltistan and POJK, and enabling local people to communicate directly with India to solve this matter for good. That is the only way that this matter could have been solved, but Pakistan is refusing to withdraw. And now we have China colluding with Pakistan and solidifying the occupation and prolonging the occupation. We believe that, this nexus need to be broken. Otherwise, Gilgit-Baltistan will never get its constitutional or political rights that it deserves under the Indian Constitution. Recent changes that we have seen in Ladakh are very, heartening. They are very encouraging, and we believe that, Gilgit-Baltistan has a right to enjoy the same rights the people in Ladakh enjoy. But that cannot happen if China and Pakistan are occupying the land. So Pakistan for the last 71 years have occupied Gilgit-Baltistan, and it has proven to the world that it doesn't have the legal capacity to extend its constitution to Gilgit-Baltistan. So we're living without a constitution, without any proper judicial rights, administrative rights, self-governance. Everything is ad hoc. Everything is like top-down approach. Everything is, you know, man rule. The Viceroy of Pakistan, who's called the Minister of Kashmir Affairs, he rules Gilgit-Baltistan like a viceroy, and he has ultimate authority over local judiciary, administration, and revenue. All the natural resources are being exploited and stolen for local people from local people, because there is no political or constitutional body in Gilgit-Baltistan that could stop that abuse. So we believe that we have wasted enough time, and it's, the world should realize that India is the only country that can extend its constitution to Gilgit-Baltistan and give Gilgit-Baltistan the same rights that other citizens enjoy. And in order for that to happen, Pakistan has to withdraw. And I think that is something that, Indians should think about. And that's where probably I'll stop now. Thank you. I can't hear you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Senge ji. I think that gave a very good perspective about things, from historical to what is it at present. But maybe I would request you to fill a few gaps. I'll just bring it out to you. One, I think people of India are not emotionally connected to this in terms of the sacrifices made by the people of Gilgit-Baltistan in defending themselves. The stories are never told in India. And the Indian army that tried to resist. For instance, the Skardu regiment, the garrison which was trying to guard Skardu, staved off the Pakistani attack for 8 months. They were surrounded for 8 months without any supplies coming from outside. And finally, when Indian government asked them to surrender, the Pakistani army butchered every single soldier of that particular regiment. That is something which is not told everywhere across. I thought if you could throw some light in terms of the pain that this land underwent during the Pakistani occupation and subsequently, that is something which the people of India should emotionally connect to.
Yes.
And the connection is lost, right? That's an area which I would want you to throw some light on.
So yes, the human right aspect, you're right. I kind of skipped it while talking about the history. So when Pakistan occupied Gilgit-Baltistan, it knew that it will behave like an occupier, because it was not going to have the green light from the British authorities to establish a legal relationship with it the way it did with Balochistan, for instance, or Sindh or Punjab or other areas. And it wanted to pursue the cause of Kashmir in a larger, framework where Gilgit-Baltistan was part of Jammu and Kashmir, and it could not really see Gilgit-Baltistan in a disconnected frame, as a separate entity from Kashmir in an isolation. So our relationship with Kashmir, whether Pakistan wanted or not, continued because of India's insistence and because of United Nations resolutions. And Pakistan was unable to, there were many attempts made during different times. For instance, there was a trip to Peshawar, right? There were times when, what was that? The border areas and state ministry was taking care of Gilgit-Baltistan. There were times that it was ruled like an agency, like a tribal area. But at the end, the legal relationship with India and Jammu Kashmir was able to sustain itself. So Pakistan went through a lot of uh, these episodes, of trying to alter and amend Gilgit-Baltistan status to solidify its own control over Gilgit. That shows how insecure Pakistan was vis-a-vis Gilgit-Baltistan. So if you cannot establish a legal relationship, but at the same time you consider it really vital to have possession of that land and people, then the only way you can do is by using iron fist, by using force. And that's what Pakistan did from day one. So, as you know, we are told that we were living in harmony as Shias and Sunnis in Gilgit-Baltistan and Muslims and Buddhists for most part of the time. But then when Pakistan came, it started instigating local people along religious and sectarian lines, right? So when Sardar Alam came, he started uh, this campaign where he was trying to promote, Shias trying to have their own state and trying to rebel against Kashmir or not accept authority of Sardar Alam. He was able to gain support of the local Sunnis by doing that. So the rift that he created between Shia and Sunni in 1947, eventually it evolved. It turned that one seed that he planted, he slowly evolved into a big, and today you can see that it's a huge tree now, where the Shias and Sunnis have, been living. So a lot of human rights violations that we see today in Gilgit-Baltistan are sectarian, and Pakistan has been able to employ those tensions as a tool to interfere in local politics, impose its own policies and decisions upon local people, and bring people from outside in the name of maintaining law and order. So whether it is Pakistani soldiers, whether it's Pakistani paramilitary, whether it's Pakistani civilian bureaucracy, they all come with the and they are at each other's throat. And that's why we need to maintain law and order, and that's why Pakistanis need to come and rule the local people. So today, on top of the sectarian killing and the Shia genocide that we have seen in 1988, 1992, we also see that there's a huge influx of Pakistani officials who control our policies, our natural resources. It's also coming from Pakistan. So they're taking away our jobs. They are stripping us of control over our revenue from our natural resources and compromising the financial sustainability of Gilgit-Baltistan. And when we don't have control over our natural resource, then we are dependent on handouts from Islamabad. So that's what they do. They steal our resources and they throw back, a bone to us and want us to be thankful to them. So Gilgit-Baltistan has been going through this ad hocism, colonial ad hocism for the last 71 years. And it is done to suppress local people. And then whenever somebody raises voice, like the activists like myself, either they are pushed out of Gilgit-Baltistan or they are put in jail. So today you see with different excuses, for instance, anybody who criticizes China-Pakistan economic corridor is considered a terrorist. And they are put in jail. The anti-terrorism court then take up their cases, and it takes years and years, and people are losing jobs, they're losing their bank accounts and access to their financial security, they're losing their future. Many of the kids have not been able to pursue their studies um, regularly because of how Pakistani government and the military treat them for speaking up for their rights. So we know Baba Jan, for instance, he's in jail for like, if you add up all the charges against him, it's like more than 60 years of, you know, we have about 13 or 14 other from District Gilgit and Hunza who are serving life. Hundreds and hundreds of other activists have been charged for terrorism, and they have been restricted to their districts, so they cannot leave their districts without getting permission from the local police. Many have lost their jobs. Many have been tortured in jail. Colonel Hasan Khan, for instance, they have demolished his house. He himself is living in exile in Europe. Um, my family has been tortured. They have been tortured by the Pakistani military. Psychological torture is very common, where they call our mothers and sisters and other family members, especially women, to their offices, or they visit homes and they insult them. Um, People have lost economic opportunities and jobs for speaking up for their rights. So Pakistan is compromising the interest of the local people to accommodate China. That is what they're doing. Pakistan does not see people of Gilgit-Baltistan as the first, um, you know, uh, the people who have the right over their land and resources. They see local people who come in their way of prosperity. So Pakistan's prosperity lies in economic downfall of local people, and vice versa. There is no model that Pakistan could use that win. We have to lose in order for Pakistan to win. We have to lose in order for China to win, and vice versa. So this is something that the local people are going through, and we believe that not granting constitutional rights is a way for Pakistan to dictate terms to local people in an ad hoc manner. It enables Pakistan to control and manipulate local people in a much more convenient way. So that is, I think, something that local people are suffering and going through. That they have no allies in the world. They do not know. The problem with people of Gilgit-Baltistan is they do not really know how to establish relationship with the outside world to seek help. Many, for instance, people who adhere to socialist and communist principles in Gilgit-Baltistan, they think that it is better to suffer under the Pakistan than seek help from the capitalist West, right? Because they think that West is a bigger enemy than Pakistan. Many Shias, they think that it is better to accommodate Iran than the interest of the local people. So if Iran and China relationship is thriving, then letting China exploit Gilgit-Baltistan is okay for them, even though it undermines the economic interest of their own future generations. But they think short term, and they're letting China. Comes the Hindu-Muslim factor. Why should we seek help from India? India is a Hindu country. So a lot of Muslims think like that too. So I think local people really do not know how to establish relationship. I mean, if you go into history and read about the 23 years of Prophet Muhammad when he was ruling Medina, and before that, all of his allies were non-Muslims, right? The Romans were his allies, the Ethiopians who were Christians were his allies, the Christians in the Arab world were his allies. He was establishing alliances, military alliances with non-Muslims because he knew that he was in a small minority and he needed help. But when it comes to Gilgit-Baltistan, people don't realize that religion is not a factor when it comes to your own survival and sustainability, because Pakistan doesn't care, what religion people follow when it establishes its own alliances. But when it comes to people of Gilgit-Baltistan, they always get a Hindu country. Is Hindu our friend? They have this very childish way of looking at politics. Maybe because they learned their politics from the mosques. And in the mosque, when a mullah who has hardly completed his 10 years of education, most of the mullahs, either they have completed 8 years of education, which we call the middle school, or the 10 years of education, which we call the high school. So they're not really learned in strategic affairs, politics, political science, and then they go ahead and sit on the pulpit and then they teach their followers politics. So they black, right? There's no gray when it comes to when the politics that they try to pursue or try to employ. So I think these are some of the aspects that let local people suffer. They shouldn't be suffering for that long. They have a history of like self-governance and autonomy and ruling their own land and a rich civilization. Our civilization thousands of years old. Pakistan is only 70 years old. We shouldn't be intimidated by Pakistan the way we are because of the religious factor. I think it has played very much against our interest.
I think that should bring us to the point where you haven't really spoken. Yes, you said something about Pakistan trying, they kind of torturing your family. But I think it begs to ask, the situation is that you probably have to suffer so much in, in Gilgit-Baltistan that you are forced to leave the country. So probably it'll be important that you share your journey from Indus to Potomac.
Indus to Potomac. That's a very good, I think, way to put it.
By the way, friends, Skardu is a town on the Indus River.
Skardu
that is the reason. That is the reason I'm saying
yes.
Indus
yes,
to Potomac. Yeah, please go ahead.
Skardu and to some extent Leh, both of them are on Indus.
Yeah.
And then we have Washington D.C. on. I would elaborate. That needs too much to be explaining. I did my engineering from Pakistani Punjab, from University of Engineering and Technology. Then I went to England. I did my master's in development studies. I worked with Aga Khan Foundation's different projects in the rural sector for like 5 or 6 years. And during the same time, I became a cultural activist. And I started learning about, Tibetan relationship with Gilgit-Baltistan and our script when I was about 12 or 13 years old. And I was lucky that I was living outside Gilgit-Baltistan, so I had access to all these books. And that our people from Gilgit-Baltistan, they also travel to Nepal to trade turquoises and other jewelry. Local people need, turquoise. It's part of our culture, so they go to Nepal to get turquoises. So they used to bring, different resources for me to learn more about our culture. So I became probably the third or fourth person at such a young age. I was like probably 13 to learn our own script, which our community had abandoned about 300 or 400 years ago. So I went back and I started, this NGO, and we used to do a lot of like cultural work in Gilgit-Baltistan while I was still working with Aga Khan Foundation's, organization. We used to put signboards on shops and offices. We used to go and talk to different people about their relationship with Ladakh and Tibet. We tried to produce school primers, books that kids could learn. I used to, go and give, lessons to people who wanted to learn our script. So for several years, it continued like that. And then eventually, I think ISI didn't like what we were doing because we were trying to reestablish and our relationship with India. And I think I was probably too forceful in saying that we should abandon Arabic. I think I should have gone that far. So things became difficult. And then slowly, at that point, I want to be honest, I didn't know much about our relationship with Jammu and Kashmir because we are not taught, by the Pakistanis about our relationship with Jammu and Kashmir because that would establish our relationship with India. So we were told that, we are just a separate entity, and many people even didn't know our relationship with Tibet or Ladakh. When I went to Gilgit-Baltistan as a child, they used to say that Balti is a language, is an isolated language. It doesn't have any relationship with other languages in its neighborhood. So it was very difficult to like communicate to local people and try to establish the fact that we're such a huge family that extend all the way to Xining in China and Chengdu in China, in central China, and we speak the same language, and we have our civilizational relationship with India, and culture and all that. So slowly, then I started learning about our politics, and that's how I found out about relationship with Jammu and Kashmir, and that's how I found out that we're not even Pakistani. And if we're not Pakistani, then Pakistan probably doesn't have the capacity to give us any rights. So then it dawned on me why Pakistan is so against our language and our identity because what they have done in Bangladesh, against their identity and their culture, and it eventually led to a huge genocide. So it kind of like helped me connect all these dots, and then I realized that Pakistan is not our friend. It's an enemy. It is trying to suppress us. So I think that relationship, like what is our relationship with Pakistan? It evolved, and eventually I was able to establish this, conclude this that Pakistan is an enemy. And it is trying to keep us away from our culture, our identity, because of its own strategic relationship. And during the day, at the same time when I was working there, we saw Chinese coming, and at that time the Chinese military actually used to come every Thursday, and they used to station in a hotel behind Park Hotel. I forgot the name of that hotel. It was small. They used to have the flag staff meeting, and with the Pakistani military officials. So Afghan war was happening, and the Chinese involvement in the jihad. As we all know, they had training camps in Xinjiang and Gilgit that Americans and Chinese were kind of collaborating at that time with the Pakistanis. So I think things were very volatile. There was a lot of commotion in Gilgit. Political and geostrategic affairs were evolving, and we eventually realized why Kashmir is so important for Pakistan. Why it's important for Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan to remain separate from Kashmir. And so eventually I think I went into this, the political phase of, I thought you can't really work on your language until, you're part of Pakistan. You have to be part of India, you're part of Tibet for it to happen. So I think that was one of my interests, to be able to take it international. So when I was in England, I used to attend these conferences. That was a few years before I came to US, and there was a conference held by International Association for Ladakh Studies, and I attended that. I think it was in the city of Oxford, and someone was talking about, Gilgit-Baltistan as northern areas of Pakistan or something, and I got up and I said, no, it is not part of Pakistan, it's part of Ladakh. So I think probably I was the first person they heard who would say that it's part of Ladakh. So it's very strange for them.
Mm.
So I think that's how I established relationship with Indians and Tibetans, and then I started attending other conferences, and eventually I realized I think somebody has to take it international. Nobody was doing it at that time. Abdul Hamid Khan was trying, and I think he had already escaped from Pakistan. And other people, whoever tried, they were putting them in jail in Gilgit. Like at that time, I think because of it was Ziaul Haq's martial law, things were not that easy. You couldn't. So under martial law, emergency was declared everywhere, so you couldn't have political activity. So I think taking it international was important. Meanwhile, the agents of ISI were bothering me in Gilgit, in Baltistan. There was this really tall guy, and he used to have this really old, long cameras that Bollywood used to have, right? He used to look like a big rocket launcher. And he used to carry that and follow me like wherever I went. He used to follow me like that. and and I was with these. I forgot their nationality. I think one of them was Greek. They wanted to learn from me about Balti music, and we were walking in the street, and this guy, he was, and I felt bad for him because he had to like chase me around the entire day, entire week. And then one day I stopped and I said, "Why are you doing it?" And he's like, "This is my job. You do whatever you do. I'm not like, physically intimidating you. I keep." And then we used to put signboards, and then, at night, these agents used to come and they used to like, tear the signboards off the things. Eventually helped me realize that either I would end up in jail, right? Or either I will end up not doing it and become an ordinary person taking some job in, I don't know, some office, economic field, and like, become part of the system, or I have to pursue something that I want to do. So then I was able to like, find some connections and was able to come to the US.
Great, and good for you. The world also has now got to know about what's happening in Baltistan, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Maybe just a couple of things before I throw open to the members here for questions. You mentioned about some places which had some Sanskrit names, right? Rivers, mountains, and all you said. Are there any traces of either Hindu or Buddhist temples still there, ruins, or rock carvings, or things like that, which still remind of its pre-Islamic past?
Yeah, so I think Hindu aspect of Gilgit-Baltistan is really ancient compared to Buddhist. So we have Buddhist chortans and ruins of the famous standing Buddha, Chamba we call, standing Buddha is a Chamba, the future Buddha, right? Who's yet to come. Chamba is in Gilgit. It's really famous, that one standing Buddha. Everybody goes and visits that Buddha.
Your signal is broken. Maybe you
We
want
have
to
a
repeat.
huge rock called Mantal or Mandal from Mandala of a huge chortan in Gilgit.
Sengeji, if you don't mind, I think your signal was a little broken. If you don't mind, if you just repeat it a bit.
Are you trying to? Do you want me to repeat it? Okay.
Yeah. You're talking about the standing
So
Buddha, yeah.
yeah, so we used to have we used to have a very famous university in Sugar Valley, and it's not really accessible right now because the road is, from has been laid on closer to the rivers, and that university used to be up on a hill, and there are a lot of Buddhist etchings and ruins of that university that exist in Shigar. You see traces of walls, not very prominent, but a few probably traces of walls that you see that where the university used to be. And I've been able to visit it. I've seen that rock with the etchings. The Skardo etching is very easy. Office, actually, the Aga Khan Foundation office. It's literally 10-minute walk from there. It's at the end of our town when you go south towards Kashmir Valley. And it is a huge boulder. It has 28 Buddhas on it. There's a Sakyamuni, the sitting Buddha, on it in the middle of it. And then there are, I think, about 24 sitting Buddha or Sakyamuni around it. Chen Rezik, as we say. And then we have the Chamba, 4 standing Buddhas. So that's one of the most famous boulders with the Buddha etchings. We have Tibetan prayers etched on different rocks in Tibetan script all over Gilgit-Baltistan, all the way to Gilgit and maybe Chitral as well. We have the famous Buddha etching in Gilgit, right at the water channel on the hillside of Gilgit city. It's again, easy 15-20 minute walk from there, and I've been there a couple of times. So our Buddhist past is very active. If you go along the Karakoram highway, you will see there about between 35 to 55,000 petroglyphs that exist between Gilgit, Hunza, all the way down to Shatial and down to Mansehra. The entire area on the left and right hand side of the Karakoram highway have all these etchings from the Sogdian and Parthian and the Tibetan era. There's a village in Hunza called Ganesh from Lord Ganesha, and it still has a lot of etchings from that time, which in Buddhist past and Sogdian era, when it still had Hindu kingdoms here. There are a lot of mountains and lakes, which have Sanskrit names, and we up until Iranian Revolution, which changed local Shia religion in a significant way. Local people used to revere, the local deities, and we used to call them for blessing before harvest or before sowing, before taking our yaks and other livestock to the pastures. Before collecting fruit from the trees, we used to sing songs to them. So they would not let the rain come at the wrong time, when it's time to harvest or collect the fruit from the trees. So we used to have this connection with the local deities and, our local shamans. I think they still do in Hunza and Nagar. Shamanism is still very prevalent in Hunza, I think. Local shamans, they try to connect with the local deities and communicate and seek, blessing, and it's pretty much, there.
Okay, great. And my last question before I open it up to Alok ji is, what do you see happening in the future? I mean, personally, are you confident that it will ever be coming back to India, or given the iron grip of China and Pakistan, the hopes are not that great? How do you look at it? You've come out, you've done activism, you've gone around, and we haven't seen really at a policy level, India really doing steps which we all wanted to do. So how do you look at the future?
Well, I think there were times in the past when India could have taken it, you know. In 1971, India could have taken it. There were other times. Um, so India had a policy of not crossing the line of control and respecting Simla Agreement, while Pakistan never respected that Simla Agreement and always crossed the line of control. So I think India did have chance, and there were times when local people were desperate for India's help. And there was a time when local people, they burned government offices in Gilgit, and they wanted to occupy the local radio station and call India for help. You know, um, the thing is that it depends on India's relationship with the international community. Because time that maybe India is relearning how to establish those relationships. And India is evolving, and Gilgit-Baltistan is evolving at this simultaneously. So I do believe that at some point India will be able to extend its physical control and help Gilgit-Baltistan enjoy the same rights. India is an evolving economy. It's the fourth largest economy now. It has passed Britain, I guess. So it's on its way to become the second or the third largest in the world. And I think with that comes responsibility, and responsibility also means how to be responsible towards Gilgit-Baltistan, not just its own citizens in other states, but in Gilgit-Baltistan. So India will have to eventually show and take care of Gilgit-Baltistan. It cannot just abandon the people of Gilgit-Baltistan like that, because what Pakistan does is only exploit. And there are a few people in Gilgit-Baltistan who get money from Pakistan, and that's how they kind of keep a lid on that tension that keeps boiling there. But Pakistan means exploitation. It doesn't mean giving right to the local people. So India has to fill that vacuum. I don't know how India is going to do that. It is very frustrating sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But we continue to, not give up.
Yeah. I know if a Balti has to come to India, it's almost next to impossible.
Next to impossible. Yeah. So, I told Alokji this before, that my wife and I, we have a friend in Pune, and it was his wedding, and we were standing in line. There was an American who was born in America and no connection with Pakistan was also in line, and he got his visa the same day, and we got the visa after the marriage was done and honeymoon was done and everything was done. And I was like, embassy called us and say your visa is ready after
Probably you
like
came for the baby shower.
and maybe she was already pregnant, so we said okay, we'll probably use it at some other time.
Okay.
But the thing is that, you're right. It's almost impossible for an Indian citizen from Gilgit-Baltistan to go to India.
Yeah. Great. I think now let's throw it open. Alokji, all yours.
I wanted to thank you, Senge. I think before I have two small questions. I just wanted to tell this audience that I think if we had a few more people like Senge Sering, Gilgit-Baltistan would have been a globally well-known issue. Unfortunately, we have only one Senge Sering, and we have not been able to give him adequate support. That an intellectual person who can articulate his views so well at international fora.
We do have other people, but they're in jail right now.
They are regrettably, Senge, they're not as articulate and as intellectually enlightened as you are. Let me put it very bluntly. But I have two small questions which I just wanted to say, because you talked of Major Brown and his wife. I just always think on this issue, because I have always believed that Hasan Khan had a major role to play as far as Gilgit-Baltistan's the coup in Gilgit-Baltistan and capturing of things is concerned. and that he has claimed in his biography also, Shamsheer Se Janjeer Tak. And I felt that it suits Pakistani agenda to give greater salience to Major Brown, as he's seen as a neutral party. And it strengthens Pakistan's narrative that Major Brown acted primarily because the locals wanted him to. And Brown also wrote that in his book. But please remember, his book was published in 80s, which was almost 32 years. So when you have a fait accompli, why should you refuse to garner credit for something which has already been assigned to you? So that's one issue which I wanted to say. And the second question which I have is a very interesting one, that when Karakoram Highway was constructed, it went through Khunjerab Pass. And now, of course, CPEC is also going through Khunjerab Pass. But the traditional route was Mintaka and Kilik Pass. Now, what I wanted to know is there any movement still across these passes from Xinjiang to this area? And one related question is that Mir of Hunza had control over Raskam Valley as well as a Takdumbash Pamir also, which of course is neither claimed today because there were villages like Dafdar in Takdumbash Pamir which were part of Hunza and paid taxes to Hunza. And even Raskam Valley, which is, we have talked about Shaksgam, but we not talked of Raskam. So I'm trying to say that are there people in Hunza or the ruling family of Hunza which still claims control over Raskam and Takdumbash Pamir? I've finished.
So, yeah, one thing that probably a lot of people in Gilgit-Baltistan do not know is that the land that Bhutto gave to China in Xinjiang, on the northwestern side of Gilgit-Baltistan, if we still had it, we would have had a direct border with Tajikistan without going through Afghanistan. So those valleys that you're talking about connected us directly with Tajikistan, and the Raja of Hunza or the Mir of Hunza had claim over it. So if anyone has to establish a claim over Raskam, or in some documents I've also seen Aghil, Aghil Valley, which is north of Raskam, that used to be part of Jammu and Kashmir, then it has to be either the family of Maharaja in Jammu and Kashmir or Mir of Hunza. Any of them do still claim those areas, but it feels like it has fallen on the shoulder of local activists, not the ruling family anymore, but the activists in Hunza who continue to claim that what Pakistan has done, what Zulfikar Ali Bhutto has done, was illegal and wrong decision, and these lands should be given back to Gilgit-Baltistan, back to Hunza. The ruling family in Shigar are not that vocal about Shasgam, but I remember that the Bade Raja Saab, Raja Sabha, I had many sittings with him, and when he was compiling his dictionary of Balti language, he came and he talked to me about how to incorporate Tibetan script into it and other stuff. So we had very good relationship with the royal family, and he used to mention about Shasgam, but they have never spoken on any official capacity. They cannot afford to annoy Pakistan, because most of these Rajas in their 70s, 60s and 70s, they were getting from the Pakistani government. And then after that, they obviously it was in their interest to be in good relationship with the Pakistani rulers, to have influence and sustain their influence in their valleys, respective valleys. So I do not have a definitive answer on that, whether they still claim it or not. I'm sure, given the leverage that the Mir of Hunza has, although they have weakened Mir of Hunza under 2 years, Gilgit, Hunza is the only constituency without a member in the assembly right now. And they have kind of abandoned the royal family. So I don't know if he joins Imran Khan's party, things might change. But right now, it doesn't seem like he's in a position to claim anything.
And I think Hunza is the place which has the world's highest number of centenarians, right?
Highest number of what?
Centenarians, people who have above the age of 100. People live pretty long in Hunza.
I've heard, they say that. I'm sure, people live, the longevity in Hunza is pretty, impressive. But yeah, compared to people in Baltistan, for instance, we drink Tibetan tea, and Tibetan tea takes a lot of what do you call that? Baking soda, I guess. They put some soda in it, which is not good for your stomach lining. And they also put a lot of salt in it. Salt is really bad for you. So people in Baltistan who drink Tibetan tea, they put a lot of butter in it. They put everything that could hurt you to make it tastier. So compared to that, people in Hunza, they always enjoy either wine or whiskey. So I think it's a different diet that probably gives different length to life.
Great, you give some interesting ideas though to live long. Thank you. Okay, I'll ask Rakaji.
But that's what they say. They think
yeah.
water gives longer life.
Sure, Rakaji, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Senge Hasnan Sering ji, namaskar. We have you've been to Hyderabad and we had armed together in the Usmania University hostel.
I'm indebted to you for spending all the time with me, sacrificing.
Sir, I have two questions.
And spending that time with me.
It was a pleasure. In fact, when I met Salahuddin Owaisi later, he inquired about the man from Gilgit-Baltistan. He didn't remember your name, but then he inquired about you.
Okay.
I have two questions. One is, are Gilgit and Baltistan homogeneous? Or do they have internal differences among themselves? Gilgit, the culture of Gilgit and the culture of Baltistan, culturally, politically, are they different? And do they actually work in unison? Is one question. And the second question is, every ethnically powerful community has an icon, national icon. For example, the Singhs have their icons, and then the Baluchs have their icon, Khan of Kalas or Bugtis or whoever. What about Gilgitis and the Baltis? Do they have any nationally recognizable icon around whom the whole community can actually rally around? These are two things I wanted to know.
So Rakaji, Gilgit-Baltistan is a contemporary structure. It came into being in between 1972 and 1974. It didn't exist like that before. Actually, Baltistan is a very modern name. It was never used officially until, Bhutto, he created a district. Today that is, they have subdivided it. But at that time it was called District Baltistan. That was the first time the word Baltistan was officially used. So it's very modern, these words. When Zardari was promulgating the ordinance in 2009, there was a huge dispute about what should be the name of the region. People were not happy with the word Gilgit-Baltistan.
Yeah.
People in Chilas and Astor and Rizr thought, they were left out. So Gilgit is just a very small valley. It's not a big region. It's a valley which is probably 20 or 30 miles long. That's it. And then Baltistan itself, has just one ethnic community, which are the Tibetan people. So other communities like the Dardik people and the Wakis and the Kwa and Sheen and Yashkun, They were not very happy, this name was not very representative. But then they had to find a compromise, so they gave it the name anyways. As far as the icons are concerned,
But then
the
Gilgit,
problem is
Gilgit,
that our icons, I hear you, to repeat the whole thing.
yeah.
No, I can't hear you.
Yeah. My point is, Gilgit Agency was a very old name. Even during Maharaja's regime and also during the British, actually have taken the whole area on on lease from Maharaja and named it Gilgit Agency. So Gilgit cannot be a new name. It is quite an quite a history attached to it.
Is the new name. Baltistan is officially, so the history of Baltistan is that we used to be called, can you hear me, Rakaji?
Yeah. I can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can.
So people of Baltistan used to be, even today when you go to Iran, they call us Tibetan. They don't call us Balti or Ladakhi, they call us Tibetan in Iran. If you go to Quetta, where the Hazara people live, the Afghan Hazaras, they call us Tibetan. So that is our real historic name. So the way the Balti word came into existence, that when Baltis used to go to Simla, which was the summer capital of the British, for daily wage labor, and eventually there was a significant number of community residing there, and they wanted to have their own identity within Ladakh based on their religion. So when because everybody, including the British, when you say Ladakhi, the first thing that comes in mind is Buddhism. Buddhist. So that's how the word Balti in the 19th century, came into existence. So there's a book written by someone who came back from Simla, and he wrote a book, and he said there was a time when the local Balti leaders in Simla decided to put a penalty on Baltis call themselves Labuya. At that time, they put, hear me?
No,
Yeah.
you'll have to repeat. What was the book saying? I think from there you have to repeat.
Yeah, so it's written in the book that the leaders in Simla, the Balti leaders in Simla, decided to punish people of Ladakhi or Bhotia or Tibeti. And that's how they were able to force people to adopt the identity of Balti. But when it came to officially using it, the British or the Dogras never used Baltistan or Balti as an official identity. So it became an official district and administrative unit in 74 when Bhutto, created three districts out of Gilgit-Baltistan. One was Ghizar, one was Gilgit, one was Baltistan. And then 5 districts, Ganche became district and then Diamir became district. So initially it was Gilgit, Diamir and Baltistan, 3 districts. So Gilgit, you're right, Gilgit itself, Gilgit Agency, and then Astor used to call Gilgit district. They used to call Astor as Gilgit district. So Tehsil Gilgit, which is the Gilgit Valley itself, and Astor together used to be called Gilgit district. But people in Hunza and Nagar and Ghizar and Diamir, they think that Gilgit does not really represent them. So that is the problem. Can you hear me? Is anyone there?
Yeah, I can hear. I can hear.
There is some breakage in between. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Because the computer keeps, so yeah, it's saying your network bandwidth is low.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have unstable connection myself, so I don't know.
Yeah, the problem is at your end. Rest of it is fine. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. So now your second question was the icons, right?
Yes.
The problem with the icons is that the icon for a Balti is a villain for a Gilgiti. Because our rulers invaded Gilgit and vice versa. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So those people who are, honorable to us, like, what was his name? Ali Singh Anchan. He was one of our rulers. He invaded Gilgit and killed a lot of people there. He invaded Chitral and killed a lot of people there. So they don't see him as an icon. So because different valleys were attacking each other, we don't have a unified icon. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can understand.
Okay. So nowadays, because up until 1970s, Gilgit-Baltistan was not a one administrative unit, so we do not have a modern icon either. But who knows, if the problem is that Pakistan never allow local political activity to happen in a smooth way. If they allow local political figures to communicate with their people and connect with their people and function, then we might be able to have an icon eventually.
Maybe it is yourself. Maybe Senge will be the icon going forward.
I don't know. People hate me a lot, so I don't know if that's going to happen.
Well, icons come out of someone's hate. That's fine. I mean, if Pakistan hates you.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Great.
A lot of people who became famous, for the first good part of their life, they were tortured.
Yeah.
They were tortured and they were hated and, abandoned and eventually, yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
If I could be there without getting tortured.
Well, I don't know. I mean, let's see. I think let's take the next. DSR Murthy Aru, please go ahead. Yeah.
There are a lot of questions on the chat column. Have you seen them?
Yeah, I'm seeing them. We'll factor them.
Namaste, Sering and Girdhir garu.
Namaste ji.
Namaste.
Murthy ji.
What is Russia's position on Gilgit-Baltistan? The other one is, how do Central Asian states look at Gilgit-Baltistan? These are two my.
What was the first question?
Russia's position on Gilgit-Baltistan. Second one is Central Asian states. How do Central Asian states will look at Gilgit-Baltistan?
And what was your first question?
Russia.
What is the Russia's position on Gilgit-Baltistan?
Russia's position. Okay. I think recently, when there was a lot of hullabaloo going on Kashmir, Article 370 was removed. A lot of countries were able to give their opinion on what they think about Jammu Kashmir and India's relationship. And I think Russia was favorable towards India. That's probably as far as I know. But then we also know that Russia has a very close relationship with China. And China and Russia are coming closer, strategically against the United States. And India is moving towards the United States. It's a very complex relationship, right? Russia wants to have good relationship with India. But at the same time, India, US are coming closer. And Russia and China are moving closer. But right now, it seems like, Russia. I look at, how countries look at Gilgit-Baltistan is whether they look at Gilgit-Baltistan as part of Pakistan or not. From that angle, I think Russia does not consider Gilgit as part of Pakistan. So that is the answer I can give you. As far as Central Asian countries are concerned, they and Afghanistan share the same opinion that India is their ally, and India is really important and useful in their fight against terrorism, Islamic terrorism. So just like in Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, they're all affected by Islamic extremism. And they think that Pakistan promotes extremism. Pakistan is the foundation, is the base for that extremism. So India is a useful ally against Pakistan to counter extremism, to promote regional trade, to open borders. In that context, I think I see Central Asia standing with India, that the border should be open and India should be allowed to go through Gilgit into Central Asia. So I had a good meeting with the Afghan ambassador in the U.S., and he was of the opinion that people should be allowed to travel between Afghanistan and India through Gilgit, and that will help contain terrorism. So I think all these countries see India as their ally.
Okay, great. Next is Himanshuji. Himanshuji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Namaste, Senge ji.
Namaskar ji, Himanshu ji.
At the outset, let me thank you for your very, very informative session. It has been very, very elaborate, and there's so much that we've learned, at least I've learned. The first time I've heard about you was probably from the interview that you gave to your good friend Arif Azakia from UK.
Yes.
So where you've spoken about freedom struggle in Baltistan, then for Saraiki people, and then also about the PTM, Pashtun Tahfuz movement, and a lot more about what's happening in Balti and Kyrgyzstan. Be that as it may, my question to you is, sometime back in 2009, Pakistan had passed the Gilgit-Baltistan self-governance rule. So I'm wondering whether there is any self-governance at all in Gilgit-Baltistan. If that being the case, could you be kind enough to elaborate a little more? Because as far as my memory serves, there's no parliamentary representative from Gilgit-Baltistan. That is one. Second is, as an honest activist from Gilgit-Baltistan, what exactly would you be expecting from the government, at least the current government of India? Because the less said about what we have done in the past from 47 to 71, 72, the better. But at least, as an Indian, we expect a lot from this current government. And so what would be your expectation? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I mean, we could have achieved a lot. The problem in India is that there's a large section of society in India that promotes the current government as an enemy of Islam, enemy of Muslim. Within India, the Indian citizens who have their own interest to regain power, they try to promote the current regime as enemy of Muslim. That doesn't really help establishing good relations with people in Gilgit-Baltistan. So the Indians themselves are promoting the image of India as enemy of Islam. You understand what I'm trying to say? It is your own people in different states who are Hindu, by the way. Most of them are Hindu. I mean, there are Muslims and Christians and Sikhs among them. But most of them are Hindu, and they have their own political interest. They're trying to promote this regime as enemy of Islam and Muslim. That makes it very hard this government to connect with people in Pakistan, Gilgit-Baltistan. So the resistance is coming from, we expect Indians to be united, bipartisan approach. In the United States, when something is of national interest, you will see a bipartisan approach and collaboration between two poles of political spectrum, which is the Democrats and the Republicans. That doesn't happen in India, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody so you're right, there's no, can you hear me or should I stop?
Yeah, I think you'll have to repeat a little bit, last part of it. I think we couldn't hear you.
Yeah, so I was saying that if the Indian themselves are trying to promote India as a demon or as an evil country, then I think something needs to start with Baltistan. So local people, do not feel so threatened by what your media is, promoting, your television and print media about India. As far as the, what was your question about governance, right? Yeah, so the governance, there was I forgot the year, and it was seemingly passed, presented by Emma Nicholson, if you remember, against Pakistan. And it put Pakistan on the back foot. It was the first time that, Gilgit-Baltistan was brought on the international, on the canvas. So I think Pakistan was under pressure, and then they were going to start working on CPEC, and they were going to promote, China's investment and involvement in Gilgit-Baltistan. So there was a lot of pressure on Pakistan to legalize its relationship with Gilgit, and that's how that governance structure came into being. But as you yourself said that it was not passed by the Pakistani parliament. It was just passed by Pakistani president, bypassing the constitution. It's not a constitutional measure. It is just an ad hoc system which enables Pakistan to exploit resources, and it's like a whitewash. It kind of distracts the international community from the realities, which is that Pakistan is still ruling Gilgit-Baltistan illegally, and it is just done to abuse our resources and take direct control over our land and resources.
Great. I saw a video of Imran Khan coming to Skardu, and he gave a lecture. When he started his speech, I think the video was just before he became the prime minister, if I'm not wrong, at the time of election campaign or whatever. He addressed the local people as "Mere pyare Gilgit Baltistani Pakistaniyo." He used the word "Mere pyare Baltistani Pakistaniyo." Right? It sounded so odd to me. Like in Hindi we use a word, right? Even if a parinda flows into Arunachal Pradesh, you will get a démarche from China, right? And there is a senior politician who's going and making this nonsensical statement in Skardu. Indian government is not even aware of it, and they just kept quiet. Some of us, our blood boiled, but then that's the way it is. That's what he's alluding to. What are your expectations from this government?
Yeah, so my expectations are that India, because it has a very strong legal relationship with us, so it should work with its allies to extend its constitutional relationship with us. Obviously, it is not going to happen without having a physical control over Gilgit-Baltistan, and that could mean a war. Nobody's saying that Pakistan is going to peacefully hand over Gilgit-Baltistan to India. Even if Pakistan withdraws, China will probably come in and make it a big mess. and complicated to the point that we'll probably be sitting there. So I think, given that India's economic and military might is increasing, its influence is increasing, given what's going on with the lockdown right now and China virus and all that, international community is recognizing India, right? So my expectation is that when India goes to other countries with a set of expectations and demands in a quid pro quo fashion, Gilgit should be part of that. Whenever you go and negotiate with any country that is willing to negotiate with you for economic benefits or strategic benefits, or wants natural resources from you, or wants pills for China virus, you should always have Gilgit as one of the negotiating points on the table. So next time when they say something, they will say something favorable, right? And I think it's not going to happen overnight, but it needed to be. India should have started a long time ago. India is a very defensive country. India always plays on back foot, and if you have that approach, political approach and worldly approach, then you will not be very ambitious, because ambition is seen as greed or lust or something weakness in you, right? Like people who have ambitions, like in Buddhism they say if you have desire, that's your foundation of all the problems, right? The desire. So maybe the Hinduism also says that don't desire for anything. And I think they need to change approach towards Gilgit, and they have to desire, but then they have to actively work on it, make allies with other countries, with the Security Council, and give representation to Gilgit-Baltistan in the Lok Sabha, in the Rajya Sabha.
Correct. I think you're bang on. But anyway, I just would say that Hinduism doesn't ever say that, don't have desire. In fact, on the contrary, one of our very important books, Bhagavad Gita, it says at the end, Uttishtantu kaunteya yuddhaya krutanischaya. He tells Arjuna to get up and fight. He never said don't have a desire. If it is your grandfather,
Very
doesn't
good.
matter, go kill him, right? If he's wrong, you go kill him. That's Hinduism, but unfortunately, too much of Gandhian and Buddhism has seeped into the rulers in Delhi. So we have a problem with it.
Pessimism, right?
Yeah.
Very pacifist.
No, it's not pacifist. It is defeatist.
Defeatist, yeah. Self-destructive, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of the questions which are asked here on the chat are related to COVID. You rightly put it, Chinese Wuhan coronavirus or CCP virus. How is the situation in GB? Because I think a lot of Shia pilgrims went to Qom and came back, and there is a problem in GB. Plus, there are rumors that the Pakistan army is trying to push a lot of people into GB to contaminate that area so that Punjab is pure, Punjab is saved. This is the kind of a narrative we tend to hear. Is there any truth in that? Is the Pakistani army and establishment trying to make GB as a dump yard of COVID cases?
So it's true that in the beginning, when people were coming back from Iran, they were allowed to go back to Gilgit-Baltistan. And then when they established quarantine centers in in Balochistan, they also had a problem because there was no self-isolation. They call it quarantine, but they were putting everyone literally in one room, sitting next to each other. There was not enough space for one person to stretch legs and lie down. So it was not really helping. People were getting infected. Even the local Baloch people were getting infected from people who were coming from Iran. It was the Pashtuns who were coming from Iran. It was people from Gilgit-Baltistan who were coming from Iran. There were a lot of other ethnicities. And in the beginning, they were allowed to go to their homes, so nobody stayed in Punjab. They just bypassed Punjab and, they kept traveling. And one of our districts called Nagar has the highest number of casualties. I mean, casualties in a sense that, testing positive, not fatalities, but testing positive. And people from Baltistan also were affected. Kharmang is 100% Shia district, so there were positive cases in Kharmang. Then the Tablighi Jamaat issue came up, and our Sunni fellows from Astor and Gilgit and Diamer district, they joined Tablighi Jamaat congregations, and they brought back the virus and infected other people in Gilgit-Baltistan. Problem with Gilgit-Baltistan is that we do not have enough testing facility. So the local authority is saying is that you can test about 15 to 20 people a day, and at this rate, it will be several months before they will finish testing the existing cases. And then on the top of that, we are having new cases coming from Karachi now. A lot of Shias, they're coming back from Karachi, and they're also infected, I guess. So there will be second waves and third waves. There will be a lot of relapses. We do not know how effective these testing tools are. If you read reports from Philippines or Netherlands or France or Czech Republic or Poland, or Turkey, they're all complaining about defective testing screening kits that came from China, made of underwears. So China is sending a lot of defective stuff, and we do not know if it is, reliable, right? So somebody that they might think tested negative could be actually spreading the virus right now in Gilgit-Baltistan. So I think the situation is very alarming for a country like Pakistan, which doesn't have enough money to even feed its own people, Imran Khan said on TV that I cannot have a lockdown because I don't have enough food for everyone.
Yeah.
So I think it's very alarming for everyone.
Yeah, but what we thought was since CPEC goes through GB, it would be in the interest of China to try and keep their corridors clean, right? If their own personnel who are actually traveling from Gwadar or Karachi or whatever through GB, Karakoram, they're vulnerable. So in their own interest, probably China should have done something to contain in this area at least. I mean, forget about Punjab. At least they should
so
have
what
done
China
it
is doing, China is pressuring its members, which are part of the BRI, like Kazakhstan, Mongolia, Cambodia, Myanmar, Pakistan, Iran, for instance, to open up the borders because it does not want the international community to think that, BRI could be halted because of this virus. They want to give this impression that they have controlled the virus in their country and they should be back in business. Tentacles in the weaker countries, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in Latin America. So they really want to get back on their foot and restart expansion, and they want to send their Chinese workers, engineers back to those countries, right? So I think that is what China's intention is right now. A lot of workers who have gone back to China, they are now on extended holidays. And there's a lot of pressure on the government from those people that they should be sent back to work, right? So international community, I think, is not really ready for China to open up because there could be second or third waves. But I think China is already doing it, and I think it's very alarming.
That is sad. Probably a few thousand lives, Gilgit-Baltistani lives wouldn't matter on the platter of CPEC, I think so.
Exactly, yeah. No, they don't care about Gilgit-Baltistan or Balochistan.
Yeah.
Actually, Pakistan would be probably, I don't know if you heard Imran Khan saying, हम तो सोच रहे थे कि कई हजार लोग मर जाएंगे लेकिन सिर्फ 300 मरे हैं. So I mean they were already
Prepared for it.
happy that more people would die and that would bring more revenue
Yeah.
and more aid from international communities. So I mean you remember Parvez Musharraf was getting $5,000 to hand over one Uyghur to China, right? They are in business of selling humans, selling
human
bodies
and body parts.
and body parts organs. So they don't care about people of the land.
Yeah.
So even in Balochistan, local people are, and not only like the virus problem, now that everybody is in their home, POK, Gilgit-Baltistan and Balochistan, which are run on 2G, services, do not have sustainable, stable internet connection. So hundreds and thousands of students are suffering because they can't really have online classes because of bad internet. And they don't care, they do not want to extend those facilities out of Punjab. They just want to keep it, where it matters.
Yeah, I think your statement about the organ thing got, I think it was jumbled up. We couldn't hear that. Is the organ trade affecting even GB as well? Organ trade to China?
We haven't heard. We haven't heard, to be frank. We haven't heard because there are no fatalities, right, in Gilgit-Baltistan, tortured by the military or, in extended lockdown.
Like in Balochistan.
So in Balochistan and in Sindh, for instance, you hear a lot about, organ trafficking in Balochistan and some parts of Sindh, but we haven't heard that happening in Gilgit-Baltistan.
Okay, sure. Rajendran ji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, G. I'm very happy to be part of this. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. There are three questions. I understand the population of GB is only about 15 lakhs plus minus change, I think, right? What is the proportion of various communities in Gilgit-Baltistan? And also, the second part of the question is, what is the best way to communicate with this population? And the third question is, how do we take the American establishment to our side to achieve the objective?
So Gilgit-Baltistan, there are 7 or 8 major ethnic groups and religious groups, linguistic groups. I would say the Tibetan-speaking people among the indigenous people, right? We're talking about the indigenous, not the Pakistani settlers. So among the indigenous, I would say there would be anywhere between 30 to 35% Tibetan-speaking. The Wakhis would be anywhere between 3 to 5%, which is a branch of Tajik language. The Khwar speakers will be probably 2%. It's another Dardik language connected to Kashmiri. And then we have Burushus, which are between 10 to 15%, or maybe 18%. And then everyone else, more than 55% population would be the Shina speakers. So Shina speaking community.
Shina is essentially in Astor and all, right? In Astor area. Shina is mostly in Astor area.
So Shina is in pretty much, except I would say one district, which is Ganche and Shigar. Shigar and Ganche The rest of the 8 districts, so Shinas are concentrated in Diamir, Dar el Tangir, Chilas, Astor. This is 100% Shina.
Yeah.
Then we have a huge population in Gilgit and Ghizar, and smaller population in Hunza, and Skardo and Kharmang districts. So this is how the community is divided. So mostly, you know, if I think he's trying to say something and he's mute, right?
And I unmuted him. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the proportion of Pakistani settlers in GB now?
So the settlers would be, you know, mostly concentrated in the Gilgit town and in the Amir district, and some of them are in Ghizar district. It's very hard to tell because there's no census done on those lines. You can't really tell who's a Shia, who's a Sunni, because those census, you know, figures never come up. But I would say, you know, anywhere between, let's say, 200 to 300,000 are Pakistani settlers in the whole population. Most of them are in Diamir, in Ghizar, and Gilgit city. But now you also see, you know, many Pashtun and people from Mansehra settling in Skardo district, for instance. People are buying land in Hunza now. Government officials, they buy land everywhere. Pakistani military officials, they buy land everywhere. So your second question was how to connect with the local people.
By the way, for the first question, how many acres of land does Imran Khan or Bilawal Bhutto have near Skardu?
I think Bilawal just owns a house. Somebody, the person, I think he's an office bearer of his own political party, and he gifted his house to Bilawal. Imran Khan, I don't know exact how many you know, acres of land he owns, but he owns land in a store district.
Store district.
And then, you know, Parvez Musharraf and General, what's his name?
Kayani.
There's a Shia general, I forgot his name, Abbas or something. He owns like about 1 acre or 2 acres of land. Then there's General Hamid Gul, he owns some land. Then Brigadier Aslam, Air Marshal, you know, Asghar Khan, all these people, they own lands there. Second question was how to connect with the local people. So I think social media is the easiest way to connect. I myself, you know, have a hard time talking to people on the phone because then they get in trouble. So if you're connected with local people and, you know, you could be able to, like, you know, seek information from them. You can meet them when you're outside Pakistan, like in Europe or Middle East or America or somewhere, right? That's a way to. What was your third question? I forgot because we've been talking a lot.
America.
How do we take the American
America,
establishment outside? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think about 5 or 10 minutes ago, I said, you know, like India has been part of the non-aligned movement for such a long time that it is also learning how to establish, you know, long-term relationship with US, right? And it is not a very easy process, but because you can see that you move 1 step forward, 2 steps backward, and that's how it's going on for the time in India in terms of trade. Pakistan is still a very important country for United States. So I don't think United States will abandon Pakistan just like that, as many people would probably like to, you know, see it going that way. Then, you know, I think it also depends on how Pakistan plays its card with the Muslim countries. So I think one thing that I've seen is that a lot of Muslim countries now have good relationship with India. So that will help because the United States and those Muslim countries have very good cordial relationships. So, but in the long run, I do see that the United States would see Gilgit becoming part of India more beneficial than it staying with Pakistan, for sure. That is a clear understanding that, you know, if you have Gilgit with Pakistan, you are inevitably strengthening China. You're giving China a tool, a bridge to connect with all the Muslim countries in the Indian Ocean, a physical link. So I think United States has realized that that Pakistan has failed to play a very constructive role in Afghanistan, for instance, right? And let's say if India had a land connection with Afghanistan through Gilgit, U.S. situation in Afghanistan would have been very different. U.S. would not have like withdrawn the way it is withdrawing now, gave a lot of leverage among different think tanks in the United States, in the State Department, and other people, individuals in official capacity, in private capacity, do understand this, that Afghanistan is really important for the United States in the long run.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anand, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Senge. This is Anand here. My question to you is with
Hi,
respect
Anand.
to the this is with respect to the emerging, geopolitical environment in the region. You have the Taliban agreement with the US happening on one side, on the Afghanistan side, the abrogation of Article 370 and 383 on this side of Jammu and Kashmir, and reports of an army build-up and pushing of COVID-19 patients in Gilgit-Baltistan. So, is it a case of acquiescence or the Pakistani establishment being unsure of the future of Gilgit-Baltistan, or
I can't really
how critical?
hear you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can I
I do
repeat
one
the
thing?
question?
No.
Yeah.
Let me disconnect and reconnect and see how it goes. Okay.
Okay, sure. Please come back. Yeah, we can. Let's
Okay.
hopefully let's see.
So you mentioned something
Can you
about
hear?
Taliban, and you mentioned something about Article 3.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a
I
boil
am.
going on. There's a bit of a boil going on there. I mean, in this particular region, the situation is emerging. There's a Taliban U.S. agreement on the in Afghanistan, and then Chinese, how critical is Gilgit-Baltistan in light of all these kind of developments happening in the region. So, is there a possibility of the quid pro quo, as you try to say, and is there a possibility of utilizing the situation? And these are my thoughts at this stage. I'd like to know more from you on this.
I mean, essentially what he's saying is, can India take advantage of this volatile situation to, do something about GB?
Hello?
Anand, you hang on. I think.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Now I can hear. Yeah.
Can you hear me well? Like, is it okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Yes.
Oh, very good. So, if you look at the last 20, 30, almost 40 years since Iranian Revolution and then Bhutto's, change of strategy vis-a-vis Afghanistan and establishing a strategic depth, starting jihadi movement in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. And then when it collapsed, we saw that all these groups that were active in Afghanistan became a pain in the neck for India. They came back to Pakistan, they established themselves in Pakistan, they got active in Kashmir, they got active in Gilgit-Baltistan. In that context, I would like to say that India and Gilgit-Baltistan are affected exactly the same way from these jihadi groups. So they attack the Shias and they attack India. They do it simultaneously, right? So I think our pain is 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 same. We are threatened by the same forces which attack us at the same time. So that is something that we need to establish, that we need to work together. It's in our interest, the entire Central Asia and Afghanistan and Gilgit and the rest of India, we need to work together if we want to uh, counter or push back this menace that is, like a big avalanche, like a big flood. It is moving towards us. With U.S. retreat in Afghanistan, Pakistan is emboldened, and you can see that Pakistani proxies are once again causing mayhem there, civilians there, and slowly, when Pakistan is more control in Afghanistan, it also means China will have more control in Afghanistan.
See,
So this nexus
Senge,
of China, yeah,
allow me to see, considering that
go ahead.
America is itching to get out of Afghanistan and it's like seeking some way out, would would acquiescence of Gilgit-Baltistan help India? It'll help the American requirement, that is easy for troops movement and control on that region. I mean, I'm just thinking from that perspective.
If Gilgit was part of India?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, definitely. If Gilgit was part of India, then U.S. would not be dependent on any other country to probably use Gujarat or Maharashtra's ports to move, its logistical supplies towards Kashmir into Gilgit. Right now, U.S. Have to rely on countries like Georgia and Armenia and Uzbekistan and so many other countries just to get into Afghanistan. Even Iran, Iran is one of the major enemies of U.S. and yet it has to accommodate what's going on on the Chabahar port, just because it could have a little access to Afghanistan through the Persian Gulf, to the Indian. India does not have land connection with Afghanistan. So India's dependency on Iran is also there because it doesn't have land connection through Gilgit. So if you look at US-India relations, one of the stumbling blocks is Iran. When it comes to negotiation, it is economic and trade issues. Yes, that is there. It's tariffs, and but it also, one of the I would say the elephant in the room, right, is Iran. India wants to have extended relations with Iran because of Chabahar port, Central Asia, and Afghanistan. So all that dependency on Iran is really delaying U.S.-India, relationship to grow. It is delaying the growth, right?
Okay, I mean,
can you hear me?
Right. Thanks, Anand. I think let's go to Subramaniam ji. VV Subramaniam, please go ahead. VSV Subramaniam.
Thank you, sir. Namaskar, Singh ji, and to Mr. Giridhar ji also. One of the learned speakers previously said, from northeast to northwest of India, there are 18 major pain points of border issues, including GB and CPEC passing through GB. So be that as it may be, recently, Government of India has brought in an FDI policy whereby they said all the countries which are land connected with India, we will not permit FDI so easily, except insofar as the terms are fulfilled. Is it a good move I see it's a good move to solve most of the border issues. Am I correct, sir?
I don't know much about your FDI policies, to be frank. I'm not really versed, in India's local economic policies. But are you saying that India will not accept investment from
No, I think
neighbors? What are you trying to say?
no, I think I'll answer that. I'll answer that. I think you will not be able to answer that. The point is,
Okay.
the FDI rule has not
Yeah.
banned FDI from our neighbors. No, it did not. All it did is it restricted. Earlier, we used to have an option called automatic route. There were no approvals required. People could have invested, except Pakistan and Bangladesh. Now they said all countries which have border with India, they cannot invest automatically. They'll have to seek Government of India approval. They have done this to stop China predatorily taking over Indian companies. So that's not going to solve your border problem at all. It's got nothing to do with border problem. It is just
Yeah,
to
that is not
control ourselves.
that is not really related to Gilgit, but
Yeah, it is not.
one thing that is related to the larger vision is that all that money that is coming from different Islamic countries to the madrasas in India, they need and Islamic organizations, and that need to be regulated.
Yeah, I understand. I think the connection seems to be pretty weak. What we'll do is probably we'll take one question or max. Let's see if the connection is still like this. Maybe we'll have to call it off. Let's see. Maybe I'll go for one more question and figure it out how it goes. Faninder ji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar ji.
Hello.
Yeah.
Audible to you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
My question is like, sir, you told like Indian government is anti-Islamic views. Is it right?
No, he didn't say that. He said the Islamic people in Gilgit-Baltistan perceive Indian government to be anti-Muslim because of our newspapers and others. We are creating an impression of anti-Islam internally. That's all he said. He didn't say government of India is anti-Islam.
No. My question is like, what are their ideas? It is coming like their views like government is against India. In what basis? In what way they are thinking it is?
I mean, he says, how did they get this impression?
That's what I was trying to say, that when Pakistan accused India of doing something against Muslims, then people in Gilgit-Baltistan take that with a pinch of salt, right? They're like, oh, it's Pakistan's agenda. It may be true, may not be true. But when your own media, when your own political groups present India as an evil, then there is no reason for people of Gilgit-Baltistan to not believe it. Because it's coming from your major political parties and major media outlets. So that's what I was trying to say, that Gilgit should be a national issue and there should be a bipartisan approach to it. It should not be polarized for petty political gains the way it is being done, and that is something that could be avoided.
Well, I may just request you to amend it a bit. It's not, you use the term your media and your NGOs. Let's call it our. You're pretty much an Indian. Doesn't matter which passport you hold. You are an Indian.
Okay. Our own media and our own people.
That sounds so better. That sounds so better. Yeah, thank you. I think we'll take the risk of going for one more question, and if it goes well, we'll see.
Sure.
Venkatramana ji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Namaskar, Senge ji.
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Namaste ji. See, you said Baltistan is not a representative word to represent the entire region. Which alternative word represents the majority of the people in the region? That is one question. And one submission I have to make. The Shia community in India today is increasingly becoming nationalistic and supporting the policies of the Modi government today. The clear distinction has come between Sunnis and Shias. And however much we try, it's becoming very difficult to win the hearts of the Sunnis here in India. But Shia, intelligent Shia, is becoming increasingly nationalistic and pro-government. This is the other submission I have to make. And the question is, which is the representative word to represent the entire Gilgit-Baltistan instead of Baltistan?
So, because it is not a historic area, it was created recently. There's no representative word for it. In history, Baltistan was a Buddhist vihara, like you said, vihara, right? A Buddhist vihara, Nangon. We do not have a representative word. We have 7 different languages, 7 ethnicities, and they do not have a from different areas. So there's no single word that everybody could really rally behind. So that's why we just use Gilgit-Baltistan.
So maybe we should give you a common word, India.
India, Bharat.
Probably they'll unite under
Bharat.
Bharat
Is much easier. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we'll take a last question. Praveen ji, please go ahead, and then we close the talk. Praveen ji, please go ahead. Yeah. Praveen ji, I think you have muted your mic. It looks.
Hello.
Yeah,
yeah.
You can talk. Yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So the respected speaker, I would like to ask you a question. What is the take of Gilgit and Baltistan people as far as the One Road initiative, One Road project taken up by the Chinese and Pakistani governments? And what is the majority of the primary education being done in this Gilgit and Baltistani region? Is it through madrasas or regular education system? And finally, the question is, what is the, and the third question is, sorry for interrupting, and the third question is what is the presence of Chinese military presence or Pakistani military presence along this One Road corridor?
CPEC. CPEC.
Yeah, CPEC corridor. Yeah. These are 3 questions, I'll be great.
Yeah. So, I mean, right now, the work on CPEC is suspended, but when they will come back, they usually building, and the mining that they do, they're also laying a cable under the Karakoram mountain and taking fiber optic cable to Xinjiang. So they're working on that. So these are the projects that Chinese will carry, and most of the time they are, connected with the government, like PLA, for instance, or the Communist Party. So they are very much part of the government. When you look at them, they're not private entities, as some people might think. Our education system is mostly, you will be very surprised, it is based on Punjab textbook board. So it is not a Pakistan textbook board, it is Punjab textbook board. So all the books that are applicable in the province of Punjab, which is the ruling province, where all the military generals come from and all the rulers come from, they take their books, our kids learn those books. So I think this is a very good question, because this shows why we do not have local heroes. Because we learn about Punjab all the time. We learn about their heroes, and we learn about, what Tughlaq did and Ghori did and Khilji did and Mughals did. So everything that happen along the GT road between Delhi and Peshawar, that's what we keep learning. So they never talk to about the local culture, our local identities, local heroes. So we have to learn books from Punjab Textbook Board. Madrasa culture is very rampant. You know, you will see money coming from Islam and Bahrain and, you know, all these different countries, Dubai, Arab Emirat. Iran is pretty big there because there are, you know, a lot of Shias there. They have their USFA Foundation, they have their Al-Mustafa Foundation. These are like government-run foundations which have established madrasas there. Saudi Arabia has established madrasas in literally every, you know, corner of Gilgit-Baltistan, even in places where there probably, you know, no Sunnis live. Then Turkey is also spending a lot of money there. So, you know, that is something that is very alarming, that Turkey is spending a lot of money there in Gilgit-Baltistan. And what was your third question?
Amount of the military presence along the CPEC project.
Yes, yes. So our literacy rate is pretty low. It's less than 50%. And most of, you know, kids, they go to private schools, government schools are in pretty bad shape, and non-Islamic system that prevails in other parts of Pakistan. Now, we believe that people who work along the CPEC do belong to PLA, or at least some kind of government subsidiary, you know, that is attached to PLA. For instance, I give you example, right? The telecom sector in Gilgit-Baltistan is run by SCO. It's called Special Communication Organization, and they are eventually connected with Pakistani military. The bank, Askari Bank, is eventually, you know, connected with Pakistani military. The bakery shops, the local, you know, confectionaries that they run are run by Pakistani military. So we believe that in the same model that China follows is that, you know, all these people who come and work in Gilgit-Baltistan, they're connected with their military, PLA, and other subsidiary organizations of PLA. I don't have exact numbers. You know, there were times when there were probably more than 4,000, but I don't know right now how many are there. And how many will come back, we're not sure. But they will probably come back in May or June.
Great. Senge ji, I think I requested 2 hours of your time and you spared me half an hour more. I mean, thanks for sparing half an hour for fellow Indians.
Did I? I didn't know that.
Yeah, you did. And
thank you.
I think we'll close it here. Just I would like to say that
okay.
Majority of the people, I would say almost all of the people who have come here on the show are all hoping and praying for what we call as Akhand Bharat. Akhand Bharat doesn't mean that somebody from sitting in Delhi is going to send diktats and, you know, notices. No. It is a cultural unity that we are all looking at. We all belong to a single culture. We could have been part of many kingdoms. It doesn't matter. But we were part of the same culture with free borders, right? Open borders. We are hoping and praying that we'll be having that very soon. And we are very proud of you. We are very proud of you. We are very proud of you, and you know, all our support and blessings with you. More power to you.
Thank you so much. I thank all of you for giving me the opportunity. I mean, I can say that, you know, you probably have somewhere else to go because nowadays you're just stuck in the homes, but still, you know, I think sitting in front of a computer for almost 2 hours and listening to me, I think it was pretty laborious. So thank you so much for all the interest that you're showing, and hopefully it will hold.
Thank you. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you.
And Bharat Mata
Okay,
ki
namaskar.
jai. Bharat Mata ki jai.
Jai Hind, Bharat Mata ki jai.
Thank you.
Thank you.